triumph for man, one giant leap for mankind.
As Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to ever walk on the moon, there was a third man on Apollo 11. Michael Collins didn't make headlines for stepping onto the moon, but he was the backbone of the mission.
Michael Collins is kind of the Forgotten Moonlander in a way. I mean, he was on that Apollo 11 mission, but he was the one that stayed on the command module. He was the one sort of orbiting while they were picking up moon rocks, if you like, and of course conducting some very important scientific research.
Did I have the best seat on Apollo 11? No. Was I happy with the seat I did have? Yes, I really was. And to be any small part of that suited me very, very well.
Michael Collins is an extraordinary man. I mean, it was such a privilege to sit opposite someone like him, who has experienced one of the greatest milestones in human history. You know, when you think about that mission to the moon, everyone remembers it that was there watching it, and everyone knows about it.
Michael is now 88, but age hasn't affected his razor-sharp mind and quick wit.
Sarah's camera.
She doesn't know who she is unless you do that to her? Okay.
Sitting opposite him and him retelling that story to me was really quite extraordinary. It sort of gave us an insight into what he experienced as the third astronaut on the Apollo 11 mission.
Besides, I was their ticket home. They couldn't get home without me.
So you had ultimately the biggest responsibility.
Yes, yes.
He was the pilot of the command module. They were on the lunar module, which landed on the moon. So being the pilot of the command module meant that he had the ultimate responsibility to bring all three of them back home.
And it all came down to a single tricky manoeuvre: redocking the lunar module.
What really underpinned how important Michael's role was in the moon mission was when he was telling us about this notebook that he had sort of around his neck, like a necklace almost, and it had 18 different scenarios, 18 different possible ways of redocking to the lunar module, and it had to be precise.
That was the part of it that I worried the most about, was if they didn't get off at all, I couldn't go and rescue them. I went home by myself. If they got off into some strange orbit, not the correct one, then I could come and rescue them sometimes, but not in other times.
And he confessed to us that he didn't commit all to memory because some of those scenarios were so far-flung that he just didn't think that they would even happen, that there was no chance of them. But, you know, it was such a specific and very precise exercise he had to get right, because if the lunar module had entered a different orbit, for example, he wasn't able to then reconnect with them. He wouldn't have been able to redock, and that could have spelt disaster. So if it wasn't for this little notebook with the 18 different possibilities that was hanging around his neck for him to refer to, he wouldn't have been able to successfully redock with the lunar module.
Not since Adam has any human known such solitude as Mike Collins is experiencing during the 47 minutes of each lunar revolution when he's behind the moon.
Michael Collins was in the command module, which was orbiting the moon, and in complete isolation for 47 minutes of each orbit. So that's when you go to the far side of the moon. And he could see nothing virtually. You know, he was inside his own little command module, the loneliest man on Earth at that, well, not even on Earth, the loneliest man in the universe at that point.
You were orbiting on the far side of the moon in absolute pitch black, complete darkness.
Yeah, the food was terrible, but I enjoyed my time behind the moon. It's a more rugged place and not a very comfortable place.
And it also gave him an opportunity really to actually view his surroundings. You know, when you think about the images that we've seen of Earth from the moon, I mean, it's extraordinary. You see this sort of crescent of Earth, which is, you know, we're so familiar when we're looking at the moon, that's what we see. But he was seeing the reverse of that.
Columbia, this is Houston, reading you loud and clear, over.
When you circled back to the bright side of the moon, what was Earth like?
Being very close to the moon was very impressive in many ways, but the moon is nothing compared to our home planet. It was it. It was center stage. It was any little thing, blue of the ocean, white of the clouds, little streaks of tan that we call continents. It's about the size of your thumbnail if you hold it out in front.
It was funny because Michael sort of relayed this story about Australia to us in the interview, and he was sort of saying, you know, they didn't think about Australia.
We paid absolutely no attention whatsoever to Australia for 2/3 of the time. The other 1/3 of the time, Australia owned us. We needed Australia. You were our guidance. You were part of our flight because you had this gigantic antenna at Parkes.
Little old Australia Down under.
Down under, yes. We needed it badly. They were our source of information. They told us where we were. So Australia went to the moon with us in that regard.
The Park satellite was able to send images of the moon back to NASA, so they were able to provide that communication between the astronauts and NASA and the rest of the world. So it played a crucial role in sort of connecting humankind with this moment and ensuring that we were all there to experience history.
But once back down on Earth, instead of being able to enjoy their hero status, the 3 astronauts were initially treated like aliens.
We were put into quarantine for 2 weeks. Some of our scientists were worried about the pathogens that we might have brought back from the moon. They possibly would be dangerous to humankind.
So they were placed into a hermetically sealed container, isolated for 2 weeks from the rest of the world. And it's funny, he sort of relayed this story to us about being in this quarantine with Buzz and Neil and a colony of white mice.
White mice lived, we were okay. White mice died, we were in deep trouble. Of course, I was checking on them. There were too many of them to give names to, but they became my friends. And
the mice survived.
The mice did beautifully, yes, thank you. Love those mice.
He still has such a fervent interest in what happens out of space. For him, Mars is the next goal. You know, it's all well and good to go back to the moon, the way he sees it, but we don't need to go back to the moon. We've been there. Mars is the great unknown. So for him, that is the next step.
Well, Mars has always been my destination, my favorite one. And and going back to the moon is certainly an interesting detour, but I would prefer that we set sail directly for Mars.
He articulated it to me so beautifully. You know, he was able to sort of say that this is something we need to satisfy so that humans are able to understand just what else is out there. You know, we are mere earthlings in this great universe and beyond, and we should appreciate that and we should understand what is out there.
It's something that we have in us. We go out at night and we look up into the sky. We see things that we don't know what they are about. We are curious. We want to see infinity, perhaps almost to visit infinity.
You know, it's everyone's dream to go to space, right? Everyone wants to go to space. Everyone wants to know what it's like out there when there is no gravity, where you lose all perspective. You don't know what's up, you don't know what's down. When we got a tour at the European Space Agency of one of the modules, you know, you get a sense of really nothing is what you thought it was. You know, their beds are upright, but in outer space, what is upright? You don't know what's front, what's back, what's up, what's down. So I just think to be able to sort of let go of your inhibitions and be so, to be out of control almost of what's happening to your body out there, you know, that would be extraordinary. So I don't know how I'd go, but I would love to experience it. Hello, I'm Sarah Abo. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our Extra Minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.